January 2019. Four 14-story towers in Sao Paulo, 224 middle-class families, and a remote security system that had never failed until the maintenance logs showed something impossible. For 11 consecutive nights, between 3:28 and 3:37 a.m., the backup files disappeared from the cloud server, always in the same 9-minute window, always in Building C. Rafael Mendes, the 38-year-old professional building manager, had a choice that violated his contract: ignore the pattern and wait for the security company to investigate on their own timeline, or bypass protocol and discover why panic buttons were being triggered by residents who swore someone stood outside their doors at exactly 3:33 a.m., even though the hallway cameras showed only a girl who didn't exist in any resident database. What he found in the authentication logs would turn a technical glitch into a criminal case, but the cameras in Building C would keep glitching at 3:33 for reasons no technician could explain. Rafael had worked as a building manager for 9 years across 3 different condominiums before taking the contract at Parque das Torres. His previous position ended after a roof collapse during heavy rain killed a janitor. The engineering report cleared him of negligence. The wrongful death lawsuit his widow filed did the same. But the image of water pooling in a third-floor hallway 2 weeks before the collapse, and his decision to schedule the inspection for the following month instead of immediately, lived in the gap between legal innocence and moral failure. He took the job at Parque das Torres because it was stable, because it paid well, because the rules were clear and the infrastructure was new. He told himself he would never again postpone a problem that had a number attached to it. The condominium operated on a strict protocol: remote security gate, biometric entry, 32 analog cameras feeding into a network video recorder with off-site access for the contracted security company. No on-site guard after 10 p.m. Any emergency went through the remote monitoring center first, then to a motorized patrol unit if needed. The internal regulations banned children under 14 from common areas after 10 p.m. without adult supervision. Visitors required app registration. Panic buttons on every floor, directly linked to the monitoring center. Rafael's job was to enforce the rules, mediate between residents and the management company, and make sure the technical systems worked as promised in the contracts everyone had signed. He worked commercial hours in person, nights and weekends by phone. The condominium employed 6 to 8 staff depending on the month: janitors, maintenance workers, cleaning crew, all on rotating shifts. Nobody stayed overnight. If something broke at 2 a.m., it waited until morning unless it threatened immediate structural damage. That was in the contract. That was the budget. That was what the residents had voted for in the last General Assembly when they chose lower monthly fees over 24-hour staffing. The first email arrived on a Monday morning. 3 garage door alarms in Building C, all at the same time over 3 different nights. 3:33 a.m. The remote monitoring center flagged it as a possible malfunction. Rafael asked the day shift janitor to review the garage access footage and identify which resident kept leaving the door open. The janitor, a man named Osvaldo, who had worked there for 6 years and knew the face of every regular resident, came back with something else. A girl, maybe 12 or 13, crossing the ground floor hallway of Building C at exactly 3:33 a.m. on all 3 nights, coming from the direction of the garage. No adult with her, no record of her entering through the main gate, no biometric match in the system. Rafael sent a formal memo through the management company. Parents should verify whether their children were leaving apartments unsupervised during late hours. He didn't mention the girl. He didn't include the footage. He wrote it as a procedural reminder, the kind of thing that goes out twice a year and that most people ignore. Someone on the staff took a phone photo of the monitor showing the girl and sent it to one of the building WhatsApp groups. By noon, the image had circulated through all 4 towers. By evening, residents were asking which apartment she came from. Nobody claimed her. A divorced father in apartment 604, Building C, had a daughter who visited on alternating weekends. Someone suggested it might be her. He denied it immediately, with the kind of sharpness that comes from being a single father in a building full of couples who watch your parenting with implicit judgment. Other residents compared family photos to the grainy security footage. The girl in the video was taller, thinner, walked with a different posture. The discussion shifted from identification to accusation. Someone was lying. Someone knew. Someone was covering. Raphael spent Tuesday morning on damage control, posting clarifications in the official condominium app, reminding residents that speculation in private chats had no legal standing and could constitute defamation. He spent Tuesday afternoon requesting the full NVR logs from the security company, trying to pinpoint when the girl had entered the building and how she bypassed biometric access. He spent Tuesday night reading the contract with the security company, highlighting the clause that required them to maintain 90 days of backup footage and provide access logs within 48 hours of any formal request. He sent the request at 11 p.m., marked as urgent, with a copy to the management company's legal department. Wednesday night at 3:34 a.m., a 72-year-old woman in apartment 1203, Building C, pressed the panic button in her hallway. The monitoring center logged it. The motorized patrol took 9 minutes to arrive. The woman, shaking and unable to speak clearly for the first few minutes, said someone had stood outside her door. Not knocking, not moving, just standing there. She didn't know for how long. She looked through the peephole 3 times before pressing the button. Each time, she saw a shape. Each time, she convinced herself it was shadow or reflected light from the stairwell. The 3rd time, she pressed the button. When the patrol arrived, the hallway was empty. Her door was unlocked. She didn't remember unlocking it. The camera on her floor showed no signal in the system log at exactly 3:33 a.m. Thursday morning, Raphael received the logs he'd requested. They showed consistent failures between 3:28 and 3:37 a.m. across 5 different nights in Building C. During those windows, cameras marked as no communication or time sync error. The cloud backup, which uploaded automatically every 24 hours, contained no files for those specific 9-minute periods. The system registered the gaps but offered no error codes, no diagnostic flags, nothing that would trigger an automatic maintenance alert. The security company's report, arriving by email at 2 p.m., blamed outdated firmware and promised an update within 10 business days. Raphael had 72 hours before the residents could force an emergency assembly. They needed signatures from 20% of units. They had 27% by Thursday afternoon. The management company, concerned about liability, told him to avoid words like breach or invasion in any written communication. The security company, worried about contract violation penalties, told him to avoid any modifications to the camera system without written authorization. The residents, afraid and angry and sending dozens of messages per hour across 8 different WhatsApp groups, told him to do something now. He made a list. Mirror the logs to printed spreadsheets. Install 2 independent cameras in Building C using emergency funds. Map every credential with access to the NVR. Organize discrete overnight patrols using volunteer residents. All of it technically within his authority. All of it practically outside the normal scope. All of it risking conflict with the security company, the management company, or both. The Fiscal Council objected to the emergency expense. 2 simple IP cameras and a small standalone DVR would cost less than $800, but it set a precedent for off-budget spending. Raphael argued that the security contract didn't cover internal investigation. The council argued that internal investigation wasn't Raphael's job. The debate consumed an entire day. He got approval by a single vote, with the condition that the equipment would be reviewed for permanent incorporation at the next scheduled assembly, and that any contract penalties would be his personal responsibility if the security company decided to pursue them. The security company sent a formal notice Friday morning. Any alteration to the camera infrastructure without prior written consent could trigger penalty clauses. They cited exclusivity provisions in the contract. Raphael decided to proceed anyway, on the condition that the new cameras would operate on a completely separate network, with no connection to the main NVR, and that every step would be documented in notarized minutes. It wouldn't eliminate the risk, but it would create a paper trail. Friday night, he installed the cameras himself. One in the service stairwell of Building C, angled toward the ground floor hallway. One in the 12th floor landing, pointed at the door of apartment 1203. Both connected to a standalone DVR with no internet access. time-stamped manually against his cell phone clock. He set up a temporary monitoring station in the party room, brought a management intern to help with logging, and prepared to stay awake through the target window. He had coffee, a printed timeline, and a spreadsheet with columns for camera number, timestamp, and observed activity. At 3:29 a.m., the official ground floor camera showed the service door opening and closing twice. No person visible. At 3:33, the feed from the Building C ground floor hallway froze for 11 seconds on the main NVR. When it resumed, the recording showed the girl walking across the frame. The independent camera, covering the same hallway from a different angle, showed an empty corridor for the entire period. No girl, no movement, no overlap. At the same timestamp, the official camera on the 12th floor reported signal intermittence for 6 seconds. When it reconnected, it showed the door to apartment 1203 closed. The independent DVR showed the door opening for approximately 3 seconds, then closing, with no clearly visible figure in the frame. Raphael spent Saturday morning reviewing the access logs for the NVR. The contract specified 3 technicians from the security company and 2 administrators from the monitoring center. The logs showed 11 remote access sessions in the past 2 weeks, all between 3:20 and 3:40 a.m. One of the user credentials belonged to a technician who had been terminated 3 months earlier. His login had never been deactivated. The management company reacted defensively. The security contract had been renewed the previous year under the prior building manager, without a competitive bid. Any scandal could raise questions about favoritism or kickbacks. They suggested letting the security company audit its own access logs. Raphael calculated that this would give them time to delete or modify records. He went around them. He contacted the internet service provider as the legal representative of the condominium and requested connection logs for the NVR's external IP address. He received a simplified report showing regular access from a single commercial IP located at a co-working space in the same city. He took that data, the screenshots showing the discrepancy between the 2 camera systems, and a printout of the unauthorized access logs, and filed a police report at a cybercrime unit under the condominium's name. The pressure escalated. The father from apartment 604 sent a legal notice demanding retractions and removal of any association between his daughter and the footage. He claimed the WhatsApp speculation constituted defamatory exposure. Raphael added a clarification to the official communications. The girl in the footage did not match any identified resident, and any further linking of specific families to the images would be considered unfounded rumor. Saturday night, only one resident volunteered to patrol the hallways during the 3:20 to 3:40 window. Another volunteer canceled, citing family conflict. Raphael's radio died at 3:31 due to battery failure. They switched to missed calls on cell phones as signals. 1 missed call for all clear, 3 for something wrong. The improvisation increased the margin for error, but it was the only option available. At 3:33 a.m., the main NVR recorded the girl walking past the door of apartment 1203. The volunteer, stationed on the stairwell between the 11th and 12th floors, reported afterward that he saw no movement during those minutes. The independent camera in the hallway showed only the door opening and closing quickly, with no clear figure visible. The NVR logs marked the timestamp with remote maintenance procedure in progress. The police investigation moved faster than expected. Within 2 weeks, they identified that the commercial IP belonged to a small security consulting company registered by the fired technician 3 months earlier. He was summoned for questioning and admitted to accessing the system. He claimed he was only testing vulnerabilities to later offer repair services to the condominium. He denied any intent to cause panic. The images of the girl, he said, were the responsibility of his former employer's system. The emergency assembly happened 3 weeks after the first panic button incident. 87 apartments sent representatives. Raphael presented a timeline, 11 nights with freezes at 3:33, 7 videos showing the girl, 3 panic button activations, 2 backup failures, 11 suspicious remote access sessions, 1 terminated employee with active login, 1 police report filed. He explained in plain terms that the same image sequence could be repeatedly injected over the live feed. The room divided. One group wanted immediate contract termination, even with the high penalty. Another group feared losing monitoring coverage during the transition to a new company. The management company tried to delay the vote, citing the financial impact of a penalty equal to 60 months of minimum wage. Raphael proposed a compromise: disable external remote access within 48 hours, create a local backup with no internet connection, and open a new competitive bid for a replacement company within 20 days. The proposal passed by simple majority. The security company responded with a technical report blaming firmware errors and improper configuration by third parties, attempting to shift responsibility to the independent cameras. Facing an ongoing criminal investigation and the threat of a class action lawsuit from residents, the company negotiated a reduced penalty for early termination. Over the next 45 days, the condominium implemented a new system with a different vendor: 40 IP cameras, local recording with no remote access, quarterly audits by an independent firm, and on-site training for 8 internal staff who would assume partial overnight surveillance on rotating shifts. The panic button protocol was revised to require dual verification between the monitoring center and a condominium representative. Any backup failure would be logged in a physical ledger. The measurable results appeared within months. Average response time to overnight incidents dropped from 9 minutes to 5. Formal security complaints decreased from 12 to 3 over 6 months. No new recordings of the girl appeared in official footage. Police forwarded the case against the former technician for unauthorized access to computer systems and fraud in electronic security. The legal process proceeded at its own pace, distant from the daily life of the building. Still, one small anomaly remained. The hallway camera on the 12th floor of Building C experienced brief freezes on 3 out of every 10 nights, almost always between 3:32 and 3:34 a.m. Technicians replaced the unit twice, substituted all cabling, switched ports on the recorder, even redirected the camera to a different section of the corridor. The pattern persisted. The phenomenon was documented in reports as recurring glitch with no operational impact. Among residents, the story became a kind of internal code. New tenants, upon moving in, were informally advised to avoid circulating alone in Building C during that time window. Any delay from the remote monitoring, even after the system change, was immediately associated with that thing with the girl at 3:33. Officially, in minutes and contracts, there was no mention of the figure. Unofficially, she influenced when teenagers came home, decisions about overnight guests, and votes in assemblies related to security budgets. The concrete legacy was a stack of documents, 18 pages of new protocols, a more expensive contract with strict audit clauses, a criminal case against a technician who tried to turn vulnerabilities into business opportunities, and a building manager viewed in 2 ways. Some residents saw him as the person who turned a rumor into a police matter. Others saw him as someone who reacted in time to the methodical repetition of a specific hour, 3:33, before the sequence of failures stopped being a statistical anomaly and became an incident with tangible victims.